and welcome to the Organizational Behavior Theory and Design Module 2. The required text reading is available on the Brightspace. I highly encourage you to go through the reading before accessing the lecture recording. The learning objectives for this module include learning the definition of motivation. At the end of this module, you should be able to identify and explain theories of motivation. You should also be able to identify the process theories of motivation. You should be able to develop a motivation plan and application of attribution theory of motivation. Now, what exactly is motivation? Motivation is essentially the underlying drive of individuals to accomplish tasks and goals. There are many factors that influence employee motivation, including organizational structure. It can be integrity of company operations and company culture. In the workplace, it is especially important to motivate employees so that they meet their full potential. Whether you're a manager with decades of experience or a new hire finishing their first week on the job, motivation is a vital element that can help retain good employees and let them reach their full potential. Now, when we're talking about the process theories of motivation, there are two main categories for theories of motivation. The first one is the content theories, and the other one is the process theories. Now, the content models of motivation focus on the what's of motivation. Like more specifically, they focus on the different things that people may feel they need in their lives. The theory is that the people's motivations will be based on acquiring the things that they think they need. Thus, by understanding their wants and needs, you can understand why and how people are motivated. Some famous content theory models that we will go through in this module include Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Hertzberg's two-factor theory, McClelland's theory of needs, and Alderfer's ERG theory. The process theories of motivation focus on the hows of motivation. Instead of focusing on what people need, these models focus on the psychological and behavioral processes that humans follow. By understanding these processes, it's possible to understand the actions, interactions, and contexts that motivate individual behaviors. These include the Skinner's reinforcement theory, Room's expectant theory, Adams' equity theory, and Locke's goal-setting theory. Now let's start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I am pretty sure most of you are familiar with this pyramid as it keeps popping up in various different aspects of healthcare specifically. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid of the needs that motivate people. So it's not really limited to healthcare or health needs of individuals. Individuals' most basic needs at the base of the pyramid are physiological. These include, once they have been fulfilled, these needs, people move on to their safety needs, and then the social well-being, self-esteem, then ultimately their need for self-actualization. Now, the criticism on Maslow's hierarchy of needs basically is that the lack of the evidence that workers have a single dominant need. So even in the physiological needs, there is multiple needs that occur. Lack of evidence that a need diminishes in strength when gratified. So even if like the basic physiological needs are met, that does not mean that the strength of that need would diminish. People might still be more focused on that need as compared to their self-actualization. And then it's difficulty in explaining individuals who neglect their lower level needs in pursuit of higher level needs. So although the base is the physiological needs, but there are people who just ignore those needs and go on to the higher level of needs and try to access those. Now, moving on to the Alderfer's ERG theory of motivation, it builds on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and states that humans have three core types of needs. Now, these include existence, relatedness, and growth. These needs may be of different levels of priority for different individuals, and their relative importance for an individual may vary over time. So over here, we don't have a definite hierarchy of needs. We have multiple needs, which the hierarchy for which are the importance for an individual for these needs may change over time. Now, the difference between Maslow's theory and the ERG theory basically includes that these two theories in that the difference between Maslow's and ERG theory, basically the difference The basic difference between the Maslow's theory of hierarchy and the ERG theory are the various different levels. In Maslow's hierarchy theory, it has 5 ascending levels, whereas in ERG theory, it only has 3 levels, and there is no definite hierarchy in those levels. In fact, in the ERG theory, the existence equates to Maslow's first 2 levels of physical and security needs. Relatedness equates to Maslow's next 2 levels of social needs and ego needs, and growth equates to Maslow's final level of self-actualization. Another difference is that the Maslow believes each need is fulfilled one at a time in an ascending order, whereas Alderfer believes that more than one need can be fulfilled at the same time. In other words, Maslow's theory is that everyone needs progress through the specific 5-level pyramid structure, whereas ERG theory is that the people satisfy their needs in different ways and in different levels. Now, another theory is basically the Hertzberg's 2-factor theory. Now, the Hertzberg's 2-factor theory model says that basic factors like safety and salary need to be met to prevent dissatisfaction at work, but that another set of higher order motivating factors like autonomy and recognition are required to create actual happiness at work. So as you can see, we can actually also superimpose the Hertzberg's 2-factor theory on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in which there are dissatisfiers and there are satisfiers. And the dissatisfiers can occur from the first 4 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then the satisfier can be the actual final level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, the Hertzberg's 2-factor theory basically consists of the hygiene factors or extrinsic job context factors, and motivators, the intrinsic job content factors. Hygiene factors in Hertzberg's model have the power to make people dissatisfied and are prerequisites for satisfaction at work, but their presence alone will never make people satisfied at work. In other words, the absence of hygiene factors will prevent satisfaction, but the presence of hygiene factors is not in itself enough to lead to high levels of work satisfaction. Now, examples of these hygiene factors include salary. So if the salary is present, it does not necessarily make job satisfaction higher. Also safety, security, working environments, working conditions, and other things with the power to make an individual unhappy in work. Motivating factors in Hertzberg's model have the power to make moderately satisfied people highly satisfied, but have no impact on satisfaction if the hygiene factors aren't already in place. Now, examples of the motivating factors include achievement, recognition, advancement, empowerment, responsibility, and intrinsically interesting work. Now, the Hertzberg's theory and the job design. The theory of job enrichment is attributed to Frederick Hertzberg, basically, who famously stated that if you want people to do a good job, give them a good job to do. Now, he believed that employee satisfaction can be enhanced through job enrichment, the addition of different tasks associated with the job that provide greater involvement and interaction with that job. Specifically, he proposed that the job must use the full ability of the employee and provide them with sufficient challenge, and any employee who demonstrates an increasing level of ability should be given correspondingly increasing levels of responsibility. Now, moving on to the job characteristic model, it provides recommendations on how to best enrich jobs in organizations and was designed by Hackman and Oldham in 1976. It was updated in 1980. The model provides 5 characteristics that state how best to design work, including skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy, and feedback. The job characteristic model states that these characteristics influence outcomes of motivation, satisfaction, and performance. The model also includes intervening variables of meaningfulness, responsibility, and knowledge of results. Now, let's delve a little bit in some of the things that I mentioned earlier, starting with skill variety. So skill variety occurs when the individual engages in a wide range of activities that requires different skills. Task identity occurs when the employee completes a whole segment of work from start to the end. Task significance occurs when the job has real meaning through making an impact on people, while autonomy occurs when employees have freedom and discretion in deciding how to carry out their work. Feedback is when employees are given clear feedback on their performance effectiveness. McClelland's acquired needs motivation theory says that humans have three types of emotional needs: achievement, power, and affiliation. Individuals can have any mix of these needs. Their motivations and behaviors are shaped by the strength and the blend of their specific needs. Now, Pink's theory is drawn from research undertaken by psychologists Harry Harlow and Edward Deci in 1971. They discovered that rewards can fail to improve people's engagement with tasks and may even damage it. Now, another study was carried out by professors at MIT in 2017 and recorded similar findings. Pink argues that traditional carrot and stick approach to motivation are becoming outdated and do not adequately address the needs of the creative and innovative workplaces of the 21st century. Despite this extrinsic motivation or type X behavior, motivating people using rewards, that is the external to work, is often deep-rooted, and particularly among older employees who are accustomed to it. According to Pink, intrinsic motivation is based on three factors. These include autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now let's look at each of these factors in more detail. Autonomy is the need to direct your own life and work. To be fully motivated, you must be able to control what you do, when you do it, and who you do it with. According to Pink, autonomy motivates us to think creatively without needing to conform to strict the workplace rules. By rethinking traditional ideas of control, like regular office hours, dress codes, numerical targets, and so on, organizations can increase the staff autonomy, build trust, and improve innovation and creativity. Motivation by autonomy is often used by software companies, many of which give their engineers time to work on their own development projects. This gives them the freedom to try out and test new ideas, which can deliver benefits to the organization, such as improved processes or innovative solutions. All of us just look at those pictures of the Google employees' workplaces and kind of like have our googly eyes to see like if we could work there. And this is an example of the autonomy that many software companies are now offering their employees. Now, the second is the mastery. Mastery is a desire to improve. If you are motivated by mastery, you'll likely see your potential as being unlimited, and you'll constantly seek to improve your skills through learning and practice. Someone who seeks mastery needs to attain it for its own sake. For example, an athlete who's motivated by mastery might want to run as fast as they possibly can. Any medals that they receive are less important than the process of continuous improvement. Now, the last is purpose. People may become disengaged and demotivated at work if they don't understand or can't invest in the bigger picture. But those who believe that they are working towards something larger and more important than themselves are often most hardworking, productive, and engaged. So encouraging them to find that purpose in their work, for instance, by connecting their personal goals to organizational targets using some of the techniques that are available, can win not only their minds, but also their hearts. Offering the staff to chance to use their skills to benefit local nonprofits, for example, can foster a strong sense of purpose, as can developing a value or ethics-led company vision that encourages people to buy in to its key organizational goals. Now, moving on to the expectancy theory. The expectancy theory assumes that human behavior is a result of conscious choice made from amongst alternatives to minimize pain and maximize pleasure. He suggested that employee performance is based on various individual factors like personality, knowledge, skills, ability, and experience. It was explained that how performance, motivation, and efforts are linked to an employee's motivation. In this theory, we employ variables like balance, instrumentality, and expectancy to determine motivation, therefore called the VIE model. The Victor Rooms theory assumes that even though employees have a different set of goals from that of the organization, they can be motivated if they believe that there exists a positive correlation between performance and efforts. The benefits or rewards will satiate their certain needs. Good performance will lead to great rewards. The urge or the desire is strong enough to satisfy them, proving their efforts are worthwhile. The expectancy theory of motivation attempts to explain why people behave the way they do. For example, do you show up at office early, work hard, and stay late? Why do you behave this way? Maybe it's because in return you expect and want to be promoted quickly and given a pay rise. Expectancy theory basically states that a person behaves the way they do because they are motivated to select that behavior ahead of others because of what they expect the result of that behavior to be. As managers, expectancy theory can help us to understand how individual team members make decisions about about their behavioral alternatives in the workplace. We can then use this information as input for creating motivated employees. Adams' equity theory, also known as the equity theory of motivation, was developed in 1963 by John Stacy Adams, a workplace behavioral psychologist. Equity theory is based on the idea that individuals are motivated by fairness. In simple terms, equity theory states that if an individual identifies an inequity between themselves and a peer, they will adjust the work they do to make the situation fair in their eyes. An example of equity theory is if an employee learns that a peer doing exactly the same job as them is earning more money, then they may choose to do less work, thus creating fairness in their eyes. The equity theory has 6 methods of the resolution of inequity. These include altering the inputs, which reduce productivity, take longer break times, and use sick days for personal activities. Altering outcomes, however, can include try to obtain an increase in pay, a bonus, or a new job title, or resort to taking supplies from the company for personal use. That is stealing. Cognitively distorting inputs or outcomes describe how much harder he or she is working. Leaving the field includes transfer to another department or quit the organization. Distorting the inputs or outcomes of the comparisons. Others may include describe the other person's job as routine and unchallenging. Changing the comparison to others is find someone in the organization more like himself or herself. Another high-performing worker is there. So these are some of the ways in which workers try to eliminate the inequity in their eyes. And as you can see from all of these are not really beneficial to the organization, to that person's motivation, as well as overall organizational output. Now, one of the major criticisms of the expectancy theory is that it does not take into account the relationship between employee performance and job satisfaction. Porter and Lawler theory of motivation is based on the assumption that rewards cause satisfaction, that sometimes performance produces rewards. They hypothesize that the relationship between satisfaction and performance is linked by another variable, that is rewards. Now, the satisfaction performance motivation model. In this model, rewards are linked directly to satisfaction through perceived equitable rewards. These variables refer to the amount of the rewards an individual feels he should receive as a result of his performance. This variable can also be expanded to include the amount of rewards an individual feels should be attached to a particular position within the organization. Therefore, Porter and Lawler view satisfaction as deficiency measure. Satisfaction is determined by the difference between actual rewards and perceived equitable rewards. If actual rewards exceed perceived rewards, then it results in satisfaction. If the opposite occurs, it results in dissatisfaction. The degree to which a person is either satisfied or dissatisfied depends on the size of the difference between the actual and the perceived equitable rewards. Moving on to the goal-setting theory. Locke and Latham's goal-setting theory details 5 principles that support the creation of effective and motivating goals. These are clarity, challenge, acceptance, feedbacks, and complexity. There are 3 steps in this goal-setting theory. First of all is setting the goal, which is specific and measurable, obtaining the goal commitment, and the last one is providing the support elements. Now, the important features of goal-setting theory basically include the willingness to work towards attainment of goal, which is the main source of job motivation. Clear, particular, and difficult goals are greater motivating factors than easy, general, and vague goals. Specific and clear goals lead to greater output and better performance. Unambiguous, measurable, and clear goals accompanied by a deadline for completion avoids misunderstanding. Goals should be realistic and challenging. This gives an individual a feeling of pride and triumph when he attains them and sets him up for attainment of the next goal. The more challenging the goal, the greater is the reward generally, and the more is the passion for achieving it. Better and appropriate feedback of results directs the employee behavior and contributes to higher performance than absence of feedback. Feedback is a means of gaining reputation, making clarifications, and regulating goal difficulties. It helps employees to work with more involvement and leads to greater job satisfaction. Employees' participation in goal is not always desirable, however. So participation of setting goal, however, makes goal more acceptable and leads to more involvement. Goal setting theory has certain eventualities, such as self-efficiency or self-efficient. Goal-setting theory has certain eventualities such as self-efficiency. It is the individual's self-confidence and faith that he has potential of performing the task. Higher the level of self-efficiency, greater will be the efforts put in by the individual when they face the challenging tasks. While lower the level of self-efficiency, less will be the efforts put in by the individual, or he might even quit while meeting challenges. Goal commitment, as I mentioned earlier, is the goal-setting theory assumes that the individual is committed to the goal and will not leave the goal. The goal commitment is dependent on the following factors, which include goals are made open, known, and broadcasted. Goals should be set self by the individual rather than designated, and the goals should be consistent with the organizational goal and vision. Moving on to reinforcement theory. Reinforcement theory says that outcomes we experience as a result of our actions and behaviors affect how we behave in future. When actions result in positive outcomes, we do more of them. When the result is negative outcome, we do less of them. Now, the reinforcement theory, as you can see, is explained in this visual, is that staff orders supplies correctly. So the reinforcement is positive and negative. If it is positive, manager praises staff for job well done, and negative, manager does not require staff to work overtime to count inventory. If they fail, however, it can be punishment, and extension can be the reinforcement. The punishment can be the manager reprimands staff for not doing their job, where extension may be that manager does nothing or eliminates the reinforcement. So these are some of the models of the reinforcement theory. We learned about the attribution theory in the previous module in terms, and now attribution theory has been used to explain motivation between high and low achievers. According to attribution theory, high achievers were approached rather than avoid tasks related to succeeding because they believe success is due to high ability and effort, which they are confident of. Failure is thought to be caused by bad luck or a poor exam. That is not their fault. Thus, failure does not affect their self-esteem, but success builds pride and confidence. On the other hand, low achievers avoid success-related chores because they tend to doubt their ability or assume success is related to luck or to who you know, or other factors beyond their control. Thus, even when stressful, it isn't as rewarding to the low achiever because he or she doesn't feel responsible. That is, it doesn't increase his or her pride or confidence. Fritz Heider argued that all people are naive psychologists who have an innate desire to understand the causes of behavior and outcomes. Attribution theory holds that attributions for these behaviors and outcomes ultimately help to shape emotional and behavioral responses. It is important to be familiar with the various dimensions along with the attributions can be classified to understand the attribution emotion behavior process. These dimensions include locus of causality, which describe the internality or externality of an attribution. Then there is stability dimension. Stable causes are those that tend to influence outcomes and behaviors consistently over time and across situations. These include intelligence and physical or governmental laws. Unstable causal factors such as amount of effort exerted on doing a task are comparatively easy to change. While the locus of causality dimension, which primarily influences emotional reactions to events and behaviors, the stability dimension affects individuals' future expectations. Now, there are certain styles of attribution. But what exactly is an attribution style? Attribution style is defined as a tendency to consistently contribute positive and negative outcomes to a specific type of cause, for example, internal or external, both stable or unstable. Optimistic attribution style is the tendency to attribute negative outcomes to external factors and is often coupled with the tendency to attribute positive outcomes to internal factors. The second attribution style, known as pessimistic attribution style, denotes the opposite tendency. Individuals who demonstrate their attributional tendency frequently attribute undesirable events to internal and frequently stable factors such as lack of intelligence, while attributing desirable outcomes to external and frequently unstable factors such as good luck. People who exhibit this tendency often lack confidence in themselves and are pessimistic about their chances for success. A hostile attribution style is similar to optimistic style in that it denotes a tendency towards external attributions for negative outcomes. The two styles differ in that the external attributions for undesirable events associated with hostile styles are also stable in nature. Now, there are certain techniques which can be used by managers to promote motivational attributes. Now, these techniques are grounded in the formation of accurate and empowering attributions. Organizations such as hospitals that require high level of resilience should try to attract and hire individuals who demonstrate high level of resilience. This can be achieved. This can be accomplished through the use of standardized measures of resilience during the employee screening process or through simple interview questions, asking potential candidates to describe past hardships and how they respond to those hardships is likely to shed light on both candidates' resilience levels, and their attributional tendencies. Although resilience is fairly stable and unchanging personal characteristic, accurate and optimistic attributional tendencies can be fostered in other ways. One technique for accomplishing this is attributional training. This can take several forms, one of which is mirroring employees' attribution styles. The second form of attributional training is less formal, and it involves discussing the causes of employee successes and failures on a case-by-case basis. Another technique is to immunize against demotivational attributions by enabling successes early in an employee's career or tenure with an organization. Managers can sometimes be overly hard on employees or may demonstrate optimistic attribution style and take credit for the successes of their departments. One way to avoid this is psychological closeness. Psychological closeness describes the extent to which two or more people from the same perceptions of their situation. To increase psychological closeness between managers and employees, organizations should work to ensure that managers have experience with the work their subordinates perform. They can be accomplished through internal promotions, that is, selecting future managers from the pool of employees currently performing the job to be supervised, and by requiring existing managers to perform the jobs that their managers are doing from time to time. As I mentioned earlier, managers can demonstrate attribution styles that bias them towards demotivational explanation of employee performance. This tendency can be offset by the use of multiple performance raters, and a good example of this is the 360-degree evaluation. The assignments for this module are available in Brightspace. This week, you not only have to submit a discussion post, but you also have to submit the case studies. Please look carefully at the instructions for the assignments and submit the assignments on time. Thank you so much.